Hi everyone. In this video, I'm going to do a quick introduction to the basics of using Unity and specifically how to use our ViewMaster with the starter code that we provide for the course. So the first thing you're going to do is download that starter code and unzip it. And inside that folder, you should see a README, which looks like this. So make sure you read this document carefully. It's got important information about versions and settings. So particularly try to download Unity version 2018.4.20, which is a long-term support from a few years ago, but has a few less bugs than some of the earlier release ones. So once you've done that, again, it's a free download online. Open up Unity, and you should see something like this. You can click open and navigate to where you saved our starter project and open that top level folder like so. So just take a few seconds to open. Make sure that you've got your VRduino headset plugged in. So that's the HDMI cord and two USB cables, one for the VRduino and one for the display controls, ready to go. Cool. So that has opened. And this is what I guess the interface of Unity looks like. So let's go through the components of it quickly. So the first thing we have here is the scene view. This contains or shows you everything that is within your scene, funnily enough. So you can see, for example, I have a camera object here, or our player, which is going to be or represent the headset. And I've got a few scene objects, which you can see there's a cube, a sphere, and a cylinder there. We'll go through a little bit more about how that operates a bit later. Down here we have the game view. So this is this window is going to show what you would see if you were wearing the headset. The hierarchy view here shows everything again that's in there and how they interact with each other. Again, we'll talk about that a bit later. The project window just down here shows sort of the directories and what you've got within the project. So this is what you're going to use to store all of the assets that you create, for example, scripts and materials and things later on. Equivalently, you can access them from the file directory, like so. You'll see that so it's under assets. You'll see that the folders match up. Awesome. And last, we have the inspector here. This window allows you to examine the properties of the things that you've got within your scene and change them on the fly in sort of this graphical interface here. Again, we'll explore that later. So the first thing we're going to do is get your VRduino connected and talking to Unity. So again, you should have plugged in all of the cords. What you're going to do next is get the VRduino information streaming to Unity. So to do that, open up that folder. And again, in there, you should see a folder called VRduino. Open that, and you should see a VRduino Arduino file. So if you've completed homework 6 correctly, this should be exactly what you did at the end of that. But just to be safe, in case you're scared of things that might have gone wrong, you're welcome to use our solution file in here. So let's deploy that to the Teensy, exactly like you did in homework 5 and 6. There we go. Excellent. So that worked. And let's navigate back to Unity. So now that our Teensy is streaming information to the serial port, we need to tell Unity where that serial port is to get the data from. So if you go into sample or into the scene, you should see the player object, which is going to represent our headset, and attached to that object, you should see that there's a read USB script. So double click on that to open the script. Unity uses C# as a language, just for reference. So pretty similar to C++. But most importantly, you should see that there is on line 15 here, you should see, oh, sorry, wrong one, line 21, you should see port name. You need to give it the port of where your Teensy is streaming to. So the easiest way to find this is to open up that Arduino code, go into Tools, Port. So you can see here that mine is connected to this port COM4, which is what matches what I've got in the script there. If yours says something different, make sure that you update this line in the code, otherwise it's not going to be able to grab those values. Make sure you save, and we'll go back to Unity. The next thing we're going to check is the display parameters. So you'll see that within the scene, there's all of this reference to cardboard. So we borrowed a plugin from the version 1, I think, of the Google Cardboard when it was released, and have kind of hacked up their parameters for our particular ViewMaster display. So if you go into under here, cardboard, scripts, look for this script here. It's called Cardboard Profile. Double click to open that up. What you'll see here, if you scroll all the way down, it should be line 195. You'll see that there's a device here for EE267 ViewMaster. The width and height here are the width and height of the screen that you were given in meters. So some of you have smaller screens. Make sure that you measure your screen dimensions and update these if you do have a smaller screen. Again, make sure you save, and we can navigate back to Unity. Great. Something to note also with the cardboard is that you may see sort of warnings pop up all over the place, and we'll see more of those later. Sort of deprecation warnings. This is again because we've used the sort of a version 1 of the cardboard plugin, which has now been deprecated. That's fine. Ignore the warnings. It'll run fine. Okay, so we've got our scene, looks good, and we've got our VRduino now streaming values to Unity. So let's see the scene deployed to the headset. So to preview what your scene is going to look like, you can press the play button here. So what you'll see when I do that, this screen, again, the game window, which shows what the user's seeing, changes to what the user's seeing. So you can see we've got left and right eyes, and now you can see if I pick up the headset and I move to look to the left, and then I move to look to the right, you can see that I'm viewing my scene like so. I can look up to the sky and down below. So we've got that 360 nice scene view there. I can put that down. You can also see that if I click on the player up here, you can see that in that scene view, how the field of view boxes are kind of tilting as I'm moving the device up and down. Cool. So it looks like it's working. The only issue is that you won't be able to see this well from within the headset. The reason being is because we need a full screen display. So to create a full screen display, we're going to need to go out of play mode, so we can unclick that play button, and we're going to build and deploy our scene. So to do this, as described in the README, you're going to go to File, Build Settings. If this is the first time that you're building, you'll need to click Add Open Scene so that this box gets ticked, and then you're going to click Build. It's going to prompt you for where you would like to build your project. My sort of preference is to create a new folder here called Builds. And then I like to keep my builds separate, so I'm going to call this Build 1 and select that folder. So it's going to build that like so. It may take a few moments. Great. And once it's done, it'll pop up like this. And you can see that within that Build 1 folder, we have the starter scene. So what we can do is to play that, we'll double click on it. Check these parameters. So my screen is a 920 by 1080. For graphics quality, this is going to depend on how good of a computer that you have. I would suggest starting at medium, and you can adjust from there. If you are having trouble, so if it's not working properly, it's probably because you've got this too high, so set it lower. Select the monitor. So if you've got it plugged in as an external monitor, it's probably your display 2, but just so I can show you what it looks like from the screen recording, I'm going to play it on my main screen. And click play. Cool. So again, you can see my headset. I'm moving left, and right. So that's working nicely. So see if you can get to that point. So make sure that you can see it from within the headset and it's all updating accordingly. Now, this isn't a very exciting scene, clearly, with a cube and cylinder. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you some of the basics of creating new objects and perhaps better looking scenes for you to play around with for your projects. Okay, so now that we know how to deploy scenes to our ViewMaster, let's explore some of the features that Unity offers to allow you to create complex scenes quickly. So for one, in the hierarchy, we can see that our objects are saved under a scene. So this is how we store projects to be deployed to the headset. So if you navigate under Assets in the project directory and then go into Scenes, you should see that's the scene that we're currently in. That's how we're stored. So let's say we want to create a new scene. So for time's sake, I'm going to duplicate this particular scene so to keep all of the camera settings that we've got, and I'm going to call it my scene. And then I can now open and go into this new scene, and you can see up here that's changed to my scene. Note that if you create a new scene, you will need to go into, when you deploy, you will need to change this. This is the old scene, so add open scenes, and this is the one when you want to build it eventually. Just note that. Okay, so what else do I want to add to my scene? I've currently got a player, which is the camera object. So you can see in this scene view here, I can zoom in and out and have a look around. So there's a dragging tool, can drag to the side, up, down, I can rotate around axis. Feel free to play around with this. It's kind of lots of fun to do. So there's my camera, and I've got a scene here. And if I look at this drop-down menu, I've got 3 different objects. Okay, so say that I wanted to create another object. To do that, I would go into the game object, 3D object, and let's create a quad since I haven't got that. So a quad is a plane per se. So now I can't see that at the moment, but a good hack for this is if you highlight the object that you've created and then you press the F key, it'll find where that is. So there it is there at the moment. You can't see because it's a side view. So if I rotate that around, it's only a 2D object. There it is there. Now I can't see this, the quad in this view, the game view, because it's not in the current view frustum of my camera. So to do that, I should move it. So what I can do is click on that object and I can use the drag tools here. So I can drag it down and suddenly you see that it comes into my view because I'm in front of the camera. Go left, right, quite fun to play with. I can also do this via the transform tool. So you can see that, again, I'm highlighting the quad. If I go over here, you can see the position, rotation, and scale of that particular game object. So it's roughly in meters, not that that means a lot in VR, but you can hover over these and drag and to move them, or you can type in a particular number to move it to that particular position. Note that the player, so your camera or your VR headset, is located at 0, 0, 0. So these are all with respect to that, so 2.56 meters per se in front. So it's quite a big quad, so I might also want to scale it. So I'm going to half its size. Whoop. Not that Z means much if it's a quad, but and left, right, up and down. So you can play with where you want that positioned in the scene as well. Same thing, you've got rotation. Oh, that one's not going to do much again because I've picked a quad, but you can see that tilting like so. So lots of freedom to play around with positions in the size of your space there. Cool. Note the parental structure here. So we have, in Unity, we have parents and children objects. So you can see that cube, sphere, and cylinder are children of the scene. What that means is that their transforms are defined with respect to their parent objects. So the cube is 3.12 meters backwards with respect to scene there. So if you put things inside of a parent, that can help you maneuver them all at the same time. So for example, if I select scene, if I move scene, I will move all of its children. So you can see the cube and the sphere moving all at the same time. So if you've got multiple game objects that are all related, that can help simplify a lot of things down the track. Whereas quad didn't move because it is its own there. It's something that's helpful to know. Okay, so we've got all white objects, which is pretty boring. So how about we give them a color? So what we can do there is create some materials. So materials give them color, just like we talked about in the class. So to do that, I'm going to create a folder. Oh, not in scenes, mind me. Again, I was in scenes, let's go back to assets. I'm going to create a folder called materials. And in that folder, I'm going to go create and material here. So let's call this something creative pink. Okay, so again, in that inspector, you can see so the shader that defines the color that is pink. Feel free to play around with these settings, but the easiest way to change a color is to just play around with this kind of color bar here. What kind of pink do I like? I don't know, something like that. Cool. So you can see that's changed. And then if you drag this material and drop it on the object that you want it to be the color, you'll see that it changes. Note that if I click on that object now, you can see that in its sort of inspector view, in its properties, it's now got this pink shader or pink color attached to it. Again, play around with some of those settings. You can make it metallic, transparent. Yeah, just feel free to play around. Google's also a really great resource for doing that. Something that would also be cool is if we could assign textures, as we talked about. So if I wanted to map an image to this quad, how could I do it? So to do that, what you're going to do is go into Assets and create a new folder and call it Resources. This is important because it's a keyword that helps Unity grab outside objects. Then what you can do is add your image. So this can be a JPEG or PNG. So if I go back to here, Assets, you can see that my Resources folder is there now. I have pre-grabbed a texture. So this is a card. It's just a PNG file. Again, I just grabbed it off the internet. Looks like that. If I put that image inside of my Resources folder, go back to Unity. In Resources, I can now see the card. Excellent. And then the cheat way is all you do is grab the card and drag it onto the object. Like so. So you can see that that's changed to that card object. What you'll see is that in that folder, it's automatically rendered that card as a material for you. So if you go into materials, you can see that it's just turned it into it all for you. Great, so what else can we do? Let's have a look. So perhaps I wanted to add some text to my scene. So if I go into Game Object, UI, Text, you can see it creates a canvas with this text object underneath. You can see it down here. So again, play around with all these settings. The UI interface is pretty intuitive and there's plenty of documentations online, but I'm going to center that and say, hello. Excellent. And just like the others, we can move this. Whoop. Where are we? Move it left and right, just like you would do for those other objects there, left. Cool. So the nice thing about Unity is that despite its graphical, sort of easy to use interface, everything is completely scriptable. So you can add scripts to the objects in your scene or any of the settings to be able to control them that way. So let's go to the card object and let's add a script. So got it there in advance. So I'm going to create a new script. And I'm going to do it so that I can move the card. So I'm going to call it move card, create and add. So you can see that a script is now attached to our card object. So double click on that one to open it up so that we can edit it. So there we go. So pretty standard class sort of format with C#. We've got start and update. So if you haven't used Unity before, I would strongly recommend using the documentation. So literally do a Google. Unity transform object. Look for the scripting documentation. It's very detailed. So here we've got the transform. You can see examples of code snippets here. I'm going to look at properties and I want to change the position, so the world space position of the transform. Cool, it's got so it's a vector3 position, world space, and you can see an example of how you might change it. So this is exactly what we're going to use. So I'm literally going to copy that code for time's sake, go into here, and let's paste it. Cool. So I'm going to make this a public variable so I can control it from the Unity editor. And for now, I'm going to delete this. So to update the position, transform.position equals transform.position plus a new vector. So let's say movement speed times delta t. Delta t is the frame rate. So vector3, so in x, y, and z. Now this is very helpful to notice. So this debug log can help see that those values that are updating in the debug menu, and I'll show you where that is. So save that for now, and let's head back to Unity. Takes a bit to load, so you can see movement speed. So I made that public so I can change it here to whatever movement speed I would prefer. Cool. And now that you can see that if I play that, you can see that the position updating here, and here comes my card into view. I think my game window needs to get, my headset needs to go and find the card. It's in a very bad position apparently. Going off the screen. Ah, very far away. Maybe let's reduce that speed. So let's start it, get the card, let's start it at the camera position. Go away. 0, 0, 0. So we should see it move away from you. Let's go a lot slower than that was, probably even slower than that. Let's try that. Fly away! It's above me. Try again. So you can see it kind of flying away there. And if I was to look, oh, I can't think I can do that. Bye-bye card. But you get the idea. Cool. The last thing that you may want to do is something like a 360-degree panorama view. So you can do this very easily in Unity using cube map textures. So these are images that encode all of the 360 pixel values or what you want to display. So you can look these up on Google, or if you go to the Stanford Computational Imaging Lab under publications, one of our old publications has a whole series on that. So if you scroll down to saliency in VR, This is just a good test thing. If you download the data set here, as I have previously done, so here's my data set, and if you go under that in image files, you can see all of these cube maps. So you can open them just to have a look. So you can see that includes the sort of the 360 degree view, which is why it looks distorted here. Feel free to look up cube maps and how that they're rendered on Google. It's quite interesting. But let's take one of those and let's go back to my Unity starter project in here. What you're going to do is put that in your resources folder. So there we go. And you can see that sitting there. And let's go back to Unity. Okay, so creating a Skybox texture. Let's go to resources so we can see our cube map here. Click on that. What you're going to do is change it from 2D to cube. So that's going to tell Unity that it is in fact a 360 cube map. So it'll just take a while to compile that. Then I'm going to save it in my materials folder. I'm going to create a new material. Great. And instead of a standard shader, I'm going to go into a Skybox shader, and our particular one is called a cube map. Feel free to look up what these four are. They're just different ways of encoding the pixel values in a single image. Okay. No cube map is currently assigned, but if you select, funnily enough, our cube map is there ready to go, and you can see it pop up there. So it's updated. I should probably call this something nice. It's a room. Excellent. And then how do you apply that to your scene? You're going to go into Windows, Rendering, Lighting Settings, and you see currently it's called a default skybox, which is this sort of sky texture that you see in the background. But you can click on the side there, scroll up, and hopefully we should see our room texture. Get out of that, and you can see very nicely we've updated in the background there. So you can see that doesn't change when I move around because it's constantly rendered sort of 360, so it's rendered out from where the user is, but you can see it down here in the game window. Let's see if it works with our VRduino. So, and headset. So we'll press play, and sure enough, if I look up, you can just see it down the bottom there. Let's maximize. Oh, can I maximize that? Let's go maximize on play so that we can all see it. I won't deploy this one. You've seen how it's deployed, but we can go left, right, and very nicely right there, I've got a nice 3D scene to look at just from one of those textures. Again, to make sure that you can see this on your ViewMaster, you'll need to make it full screen. So you need to go into File, Build Settings. Again, this is my new scene, so I'll be deploying my sample scene and build it like we did before. So that's some basics on how to operate some of the basic tools of Unity. There is so much more potential, and I'd highly recommend that you do some Googling, do some tutorials. There's plenty of help available online. The documentation is really great, so just Google Unity documentation, or if there's something that you want to do, literally Google Unity and what you want to do. I'm sure a lot of people have done it before. There's lots of pre-compiled programs available online and heaps of support. If you've got any questions, we may be able to answer them. No guarantees. You can try posting on Piazza. Otherwise, yeah, happy game development and exploring. Good luck.